Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller with today's edition of Heads Up Weather for the Ozarks. You've known about a severe weather threat for Friday. There have been some tweaks, I guess you could call them, to the forecast, which are rather significant. You're looking at one of them right there on your screen, and that the enhanced tornado risk has shifted and actually gone up in value to include a chunk of southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas. Let's take a look at the flow tomorrow at 500 millibars. We have this big trough of low pressure at 500 millibars that's moving through the Rockies. Strong winds out ahead of it. All of these winds are conducive for severe weather. They are the winds that are needed to hold a supercell structure together. And the most potent of these is out over West Kansas and getting down into parts of New Mexico. So there is what we would refer to in the industry as a bimodal aspect to this storm. All that means is there will be two lobes of activity. One will be connected on the forward end of this jet streak up here in Iowa and northern Missouri, parts of Kansas too, and eventually maybe even more northeast than that. Now, a more subtle feature that I hinted at this morning when I did my severe weather outlook for the whole nation, and it's actually coming to pass, I think, a little bit, is this kind of secondary area here ahead of the dry line. And this is what we're going to focus on. This is the NAM. Now, if I look at the NAM Cape, it's very unimpressive for Friday late in the day. This is supposed to be 4 o'clock, and there's really not a lot of unstable air here. So one might question, well, is this going to work? Well, the storms that would affect the Ozarks are going to be here, and they will fire here, and eventually this unstable air will be drawn up, I think, ahead of it. At least that's one scenario. They actually redrew the severe weather outlook for tomorrow to include this level 3 area, which before was only like in this area. And then they greatly expanded it east and southeast to actually anticipate the development of these supercell storms. It's a little bit conditional, I will say that. I don't know if there's a real high confidence of that happening, but I think there's enough going on. Again, we would look for cells to fire along the dry line down here and move into this area. I think of all the places, northwest Arkansas is probably under the gun more, but there will be kind of spillage, I think, or the possibility of that over into southwest Missouri as well. So the opening graphic did show the tornado outlook here, where the 10% area now is actually all the way up to Springfield for Friday and includes most of southwest Missouri, south and west of the Springfield area, and also Rogers and Fayetteville and Fort Smith, and even Harrison, Arkansas is included in that, and much of eastern Oklahoma. Now, even though it's not 10%, 5% is this brown area here, and that's actually nothing too shabby either. So in other words, the entire tornado probability has been more clearly defined for tomorrow, and in some cases has gone up quite a bit. So this is somewhat concerning. I looked at NATOcast. This is one of the first things I noticed this morning before all the official updates came out, was that they were painting a picture of a 5%, even a hint, little yellow dot there of 10% showing up in most of that area, but encompassing more of western Arkansas over to Little Rock and much of eastern Oklahoma instead. So that was my first clue, among others, that something was going to change for tomorrow. Let's take a look, and this is a product produced by the Storm Prediction Center. This allows you to take a look at different simulated radars from different models. We always talk about the HRRR here, and that is a high resolution, what we refer to as convection allowing model. In some cases, that can be really annoying, but in cases of severe weather, we want to turn that feature on. We want to encourage it to develop thunderstorms so we can see how bad things can get. Well, if you look at the HRR for 5 p.m. on Friday, you can see this bimodal structure. You see storms here, then kind of a gap in here, and then more storms are firing here, and these are the dry line storms right here. So this is one model. They run a bunch, look at a bunch of different scenarios at the Storm Prediction Center. Here's another one that I'm not real familiar with, but it's called the HRW. But notice how it really gets kind of carried away with the supercells there in eastern portions of Oklahoma, including a track there of a supercell. So when you see that snail trail, that's where the updraft helicity is being marked. And that just means the entire storm is rotating, and also shows that the second mode of that up there in Nebraska heading toward Iowa. If we look, one more thing I want to look at here, and just as an overview for folks in the Ozarks here. So again, 6 p.m., this is the HRRR. Notice, again, kind of a two-mode area. These storms, which could be supercellular, possibly tornadic, and then certainly your eye is drawn to this area here, which has, I think, more dynamics going forward, but this one is not that far behind. It may be a little more conditional. One thing I really wanted to point out for folks in the Ozarks is that at midnight, this area that first developed along the dry line is still moving east, and there may be some embedded trouble in that. And then this is the cold front. So this line will still approach later that night after midnight, and it could be severe, although it would be later at night and probably less prone to that. But this is one of those situations where the overall wind field increases with time overnight, and the temperatures aloft cool a little bit, and that could actually destabilize the atmosphere, even with the lack of daytime heating, in other words. So it's not the kind of situation you definitely want to ignore after a certain time period. Now, I want to jump ahead real quick to Tuesday. This is the second day in a row now that this is a concern. There is going to be, over the weekend, an upper level feature, a low that kind of cuts itself off and then decides to come back out to play, basically. So that's what this is right here. And how exactly that pans out is going to have profound impacts for Tuesday for the Ozarks. But if this pans out here, this is a highly developed severe weather situation for Tuesday, with ample moisture all the way up into Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and points south. That's the Cape from the EPS. And the outlook for that time period from the Storm Prediction Center, it's 2 days in a row now, and it looks very much the same as yesterday's. So this area here has a 15% risk. That's 6 days out. That's saying something for the Storm Prediction Center to issue that. And the last graphic I'll show you is that the CSU model for Tuesday. This is the SPC model. This is what CSU they are, and they often do, and sometimes, many times, justifiably so, enhancing the severe weather way up north where the air is purportedly going to be too cool to do anything. There might be enough dynamics up in Michigan to really support more widespread severe weather activity, but certainly down here closer to the upper level feature is nothing to shake a stick at either. I will forego the rain discussion for now, in the sake of just brevity, but I hope you find this useful. Like and share this with friends if you do. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll bring another one of these updates to you certainly Friday, probably early in the day.